Hello, dear friends. Today, within the Expert January Dialogues in Moscow, we continue discussing trends changing future and what governments, companies and people should do with that. And today, we have Professor Selina Neri here with us. We will discuss the future of the labor market and the human capital. In your presentation today, you mentioned that the future of working places is a conversation in the rear-view mirror. Like when we look at the working places, we look at the past, and based on that, we try to build our future. And we can have serious mistakes with that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. I spoke about the rear view mirror conversation of the so-called future of work. It is a conversation that has been going on for quite some time, and it is one where we are not discovering anything new. It is it makes sensation every time that someone comes up with a new future of work report or jobs of the future report, and it's a conversation that goes between the job apocalypse, meaning jobs will disappear, particularly for young people, but not only, all the way into the future is fearless and is fantastic. So we are looking at, in that conversation, we are looking at the future of work as if the only things that are changing are skills and a little bit AI on top. And I used this morning the metaphor of a cake. If you take a cake and there is a bit of icing, of sugar on top, that's what that conversation is about, the sugar on top. It is not addressing the fundamental question, which is how is our system of work, the cake itself, changing? Because once we understand that, then we can start building the system of work we want in the future, which is very different than a rear view mirror talk.
So, you are a famous expert in the world in understanding changes of the labor market, changing skills that people need. And one of your position is very important one, that you are heading the Academy of Future Readiness in the United Arab Emirates. And I'd like to hear from you, what was the starting point for you? What point in your life was very important for you when you understood that it's very important to talk about this, and this is your purpose?
It's actually something that has grown in me over time. There have been many pivotal moments because I spent a lot of my industry time in 4 industries, and then I moved into education where I am today. I became the dean of a business school, an American business school in the United Arab Emirates, and my students were executives. And it was at that time that I started to understand that we were doing a disservice to these professionals who were coming back to school for an executive MBA at the time. And I started to see there's something missing and something wrong in this chain of education, professional education, and then eventually, labor market and a professional career. And that gave me the first ingredients, so to speak, of what became over 5 years the field of future readiness, which we champion from the United Arab Emirates. It's the human side of future readiness. There are several initiatives in the world, particularly in the West, about future readiness, but they only look at it from the perspective of digitalization. Is a company future ready in terms of digital or innovation, particularly IMD in Switzerland? And that's not the type of conversation and field I'm championing with my partners. We need to talk about how people will thrive in the new world of work. That is the conversation that needs to happen. And there are many things that research is beginning to help us with, and we run an ongoing program of research in future readiness, because we have to look at it holistically from the kids in school all the way to us getting into our 70s and 80s and still being engaged in work. And we need to do it in a way that respects national values and cultures, which are the glue that keeps us together in the disruptive world. And so that has been the journey that brought me into future readiness.
Let's talk about how the labor market is changing now. In your work, you focus on 3 powers: technology, longevity, and looking for senses. Can you tell us more about that? how these separately and jointly influence the labor market and what happens there.
Yes, the first force, technology, is the one that we hear about a lot. It receives a lot of attention, and it is a fundamental force in our society and in life. But it isn't the only one, because there are two things that are happening in the life of all of us humans. The first one is that if we want and we have a bit of help from above, we can live longer and healthier. That means we stretch our professional life, not only our physical and mental life, well into 100. That means we will stay engaged with work if we choose to longer. That means in the labor market, I will have people more or less across 6 or 7 generations. With very different backgrounds and aspirations and what they expect from life. People who can actually help younger generations to come to grip with the new world of work. So longevity is one. The third one is the human quest for purpose. This isn't new. We have been searching for purpose since 3,000 or 4,000 years. But across generations, this is not only for Gen Z. I mean, I am a Gen X, I search for meaning. We want to do work that has an impact and brings meaning into our life. Look at how many hours a day or a night, every night we dedicate to our work. It's a fundamental part of our human identity. It's not just a place I go to or an organization I work with for financial means. So we are increasingly looking for purpose. Why am I here, and what is my contribution, my impact in the system? And the Great Resignation, which is this phenomenon that we have been seeing and we continue to see across the world, where people are leaving well-paid jobs because there is no alignment between their values or their purpose and what the employer or the role entails. These three are forces that are reshaping the system of work. Organizations and companies no longer can avoid thinking about how am I going to attract and retain people who are living longer, who want purpose, meaning into what they do, and might work for multiple employers at the same time in the famous portfolio choices, portfolio careers, and not only in my age group, but even much younger than me. So that is why these three forces, we need to discuss them, we need to talk about them. And in the book I am writing, and I was mentioning earlier on that I'm writing a book in this field that will be published in Russian language by MIF in September, October of this year. I elaborate what is the mechanism that is changing because of these three forces coming together.
With big pleasure, we will expect your book, and it will be really interesting to source a lot of interesting ideas from your book, also from public authorities and from other institutions if we continue the topic of the structural labor market. So, look, historically, the progress in technologies is what is with us for many years, and we saw some jobs were replaced by others with the coming up of new technologies. It's a continuous changing of the technological lifestyle. It's inherent for the population. So what's the specifics? What is the changes in the labor market in a situation of a certain profession? What's, for example, with the AI there?
So AI is transversal, doesn't know silos, divisions, functions. So the moment I implement AI in a part of an organization or a company, that same implementation will give me access to data that is not only related to that function. Let's imagine a company starts introducing in accounting and finance a piece of AI, and the team starts working with it. The same data and insights that the people and the system will generate together will not only be defined or confined to finance or accounting, will be interesting for the sales engine, for the product development engine, for the research and development engine. So that forces us even more than before to collaborate, to create value and propel ourselves and the organization forward. AI also cuts across in terms of it's not only a phenomenon of younger workers, older workers, blue collar workers, this horrible expression that I never liked, blue collar or white one. It touches everybody. There is this famous phrase, jobs are changing on us, even if we do not change jobs. And because of this, it has the potential to be an equalizer, but we have to, use it and implement it correctly, because it will break the traditional management structure. And I speak about the pyramid versus the diamond shape, and it will make our job description, role description very fluid. So in the morning I was speaking about everybody is a problem solver in this world of AI and an artist for two very different reasons. So I can take any job, it will boil down to the type of problems and complexity I solve and the type of artistry I bring. Why? Because artists are the ones that imagine future possibilities, and the problem solver side of us is the one that tackles current problems to find solutions for today. So each of us, regardless of industry, seniority or role, is a combination of the two, and this is enabled by technology.
That was a very important idea that I wanted to discuss more with you. It is dependent to the change of structure within one company, one tradition. The traditional pyramid, where you have a lot of young employees, a little bit less middle management, and a few people on top. And in this pyramid, we see continuous progress happening when the best performers grow to the middle level, then go to the top. Now, with the AI, this proportion is changing, since the AI significantly cuts the need for younger personnel. How can those pyramids be sustainable in the new world?
Very good question, because first of all, we need to understand the change to then understand how we make it sustainable. So the diamond shape is a shape where there are less junior roles at the bottom of the diamond, and the middle expands not only in terms of more people who are in middle management, but more fluid and larger roles within middle management. This is where the majority of us will be. Why? Because in the use of AI will force us and will enable us to fundamentally hold the core of a business together, both in terms of future, artistry, and problems of today. And at the top, there will be only a smaller number of leader by title. But also in the middle, I will have leadership. It's just that we don't use the term leader by title. This creates a system where, if I look at education at the moment, students come out of education, whether it's the kids, high school or university, with what in the job market we call basic skills, basic competencies. Those basic competencies used to go into the bottom of the pyramid as entry-level jobs. Since that is no longer available, this is why we speak about job apocalypse, I need to re-look at the system of education to ensure that I can engineer higher level skills in the toolkit that these young people will bring, not into the bottom, but into the middle of the diamond. It's the only way to bring them into the world of work quickly, and to satisfy the demand for what that middle management needs in terms of skill set. So we need to start from the beginning and re-look at the system of education to ensure that there is no job apocalypse anymore.
Does it mean that, for example, education is the new world will take longer?
Not necessarily. I think education will take on a different form and shape, because first of all, education will be with us lifelong. That's why we speak about lifelong learning. And by education, I don't mean only formal education, but also any other opportunity that we have to learn, which is peer-to-peer education. It's a very important one. This morning, I mentioned the tremendous success in Russia of School 21. School 21 is a very clear example of a system that is together with the existing education system, already changing the type of skill set that young people bring into the diamond shape. So education will take on a different shape. We need to be careful when we speak about this, because I am absolutely convinced that developing the mind, and this is what education is about, remains fundamental, even more so in the AI-enabled world. But it is learning that develops the person, meaning it is when I take education and I learn new ways of thinking, I can solve any problem in my life or in my business. At the moment I have learning activated, that education becomes internal. It's my toolkit. It will help me to navigate anything, both in personal life and professional life. I have worked long enough in education to know that it is often difficult to change a system that has been there for many years. And we always say, it's easier to change the course of history than the history course, because curricula are very often set for several years, 5 to 7 years. And therefore, what I advocate is practical steps that can supplement and complement the existing education system, whether it's AI helping teachers to analyze, for instance, in real time where I am as a student with my learning, or taking on the lion's share of my administrative work. Even as a professor, I would love that to happen very quickly. But education will stay with us longer. This is the big change with longevity. We are no longer in, I am born, I get educated, I have a career, I retire. That system is the system where age equals a stage in life. Today, we live already in a system where my age and my stage are different. And everybody is in a loop of working, living, and learning. And therefore, at any stage in our life, we are on a learning journey. So someone who has worked a very long time in an industry and top of their game has still learning to do, like all of us, because the system around us is completely and disruptively changing. And there are many opportunities in that, not only challenges.
Well, you spoke about changes and you mentioned the pyramid. So coming to the diamond, and before that you spoke about changes in people. People are becoming more like problem solvers and artists. What does all of this mean for just a regular person somewhere in a company 30, 35-ish years old, so that he wouldn't feel left out?
It means actually that my value, my professional value in business or in the company exponentially increases. Because first of all, I am no longer only an expert in something because I've worked in a function, let's imagine finance, marketing, supply chain, logistics for some time. So where I come from professionally does not dictate anymore where I can go. And the fact that at the bottom we are all problem solvers and artists means that I can make a career shift even within the same organization by going from one function to another, because at the end of the day, I have anyway developed my mental agility to learn, and at the end of the day, I will be dealing with a different set of problems. So for example, someone who is a senior finance manager today, or a director of finance at 35 years old, doesn't mean that his or her next career move has to remain in finance. If they want so, and the opportunity is there, absolutely. But when we look at everybody is a problem solver and an artist, it means that I can go and work in quality management, logistics, corporate sales, corporate development, as long as I have the toolkit with me that allows me to solve the different problems of their functions. So in reality, this is very not only liberating, but it offers much more agility in our professional journey than just being in one particular lane when I can go across multiple. For an employer, this means that when I look at my talent pool, I should not be looking at people depending on which function they are or which job they have today. I should be looking at them from the perspective of where do I have the right type of problem-solving skills for the challenges I have on the table. Like moving cards around the table in a more fluid way, always respecting also what the person wishes to to do and what the business needs are, because they need to marry at some stage.
Is my understanding correct that it's a good actually kind of advice for a 35 years old one? So experiment more, try dressing something. When you think outside the box and go beyond your comfort, then you'll be more popular in the future, right?
Yes, yes, and it starts with us looking at ourselves differently. I mean, look at my story. I come from industry, 30 plus years in industry, technology, luxury, global travel. Then I worked on board of directors, and then I wanted to enter education, not as a student, but as a provider of education. At 49, I decided to do my doctorate. And that was me realizing that I need competencies in research, both producing research and understanding research. So I made this choice at an age that other people might think, well, at 49, but it completely changed my life because it gave me what I needed to be able to make an impact in education. So my advice would be work on, first of all, a longer term path, because we're going to stay employed in terms of engage with work longer, and don't think that where you come from in terms of education or in terms of professional journey is where you need to stay, because there are many more opportunities, but we are all lifelong learners.
I see. Now one level down. Very important role belongs to basic education. So two things I wanted to cover. Skills that we need to arm our children with. And the second part, AI's effect and impact. Let's start with skills. What do you think is more important for general education?
So I am often asked, do I need to specialize or do I need to be a generalist? And the answer is we need both. So skills that we need from a very young age are fundamentally, everything is a human skill. I don't buy the distinction soft skills and hard skills, because these are skills of human beings. So they're all human skills. We need to teach our kids and our youth ways of thinking. This is very important, because lateral thinking, that I'm able to see around a problem or a situation. Peripheral thinking, that I can see things that the eye cannot see. Thinking in a systemic way, I understand the impact of something I do in one situation, and beyond that. These, we begin to learn them when we are in school. We need to learn them when we are in school. Then empathy, which is very important, because collaboration is one of the big things that AI is that we have to value with AI. Empathizing with someone else's point of view, as opposed to having an argument, is very important in business, and is very important to also build a society that is cohesive. Being able to entertain your point of view without necessarily being in agreement is a learned behavior. But also creativity, imagination, being able to imagine the type of future we want to have, what this school could become, what this business could become, and critical thinking. Why? Because in this world, with the amount of information that we have available, we need to be critical, we need to question everything. Otherwise, we will become very passive and believe in the loudest voice. So critical thinking is important, and we start when we are very young developing it. And then I have a set of competencies that will become more specific. For instance, everybody should be able to work with data and analyze data, for instance. This is no longer a special skill. In today's world, this should be normal. And no, I'm not talking about data crunching. AI can do that. I'm talking about the intelligence to generate insight out of data, as well as understanding just in general what technology is doing, what it is becoming, because we are driving that development and not someone else. So these are skills. Think about, for instance, working across cultures. It's very important. Look at the world we live in, understanding it's one thing to say I am an expert in negotiations. It's another thing to say, can you go to China and negotiate a deal with multiple stakeholders? This is again a skill that is needed because of the type of economic development that we are living in and the type of prosperity we want to build. And all of these go together with learning about our history, our literature, our what has built a country the way it is, and of course understanding biosciences and the world around us.
AI, well, especially large language models for the last 2 years, are very popular in education. And it's sometimes a problem in Russia. And homework doesn't make much sense. A child may come home, open a textbook, look at homework, take a picture on a smartphone, and that's it. And you can get a solution. And all you have to do is copy and paste in your pad, for example. Or take the labor market. The interviews that are being conducted are impossible to be done remotely because AI may be used. And in real life, AI can tell you what is the right answer to this or that question. So it's a completely different level of knowledge. And why may not have this knowledge? It's AI. So what do we do with this negative impact of AI?
So I'm personally very worried about this, and I was reading recently a research report that scared me. I read humanity has reached intelligence peak and we are declining, meaning we are becoming so dependent on AI that we no longer have to develop the skills ourselves. Now, you and I have developed certain skills because at the time we didn't have these tools, but our children today have them. So where is the skill development coming from, right? So I think it is important to frame the conversation in the following way. Using AI as a passive way of cheating on my homework or cheating on whatever report my employer is asking me is not going to elevate us. We have to make sure that we find time and space for young people, kids, as well as us adults to continue to work on this skill set. Because the more we use AI, the more lazy we become. And this is a very dangerous thing. We should be on top of AI, using, developing, and adopting the information that AI is giving us, as opposed to believing that I need to do bare minimum and AI will do the same. When I was the dean of the business school, AI just came into education, and the big conversation among all the large business schools of the world was, do I allow AI in the classroom or in exams or not? And I said, this is the wrong conversation. We are training people who will need to use AI at work, right? But that doesn't mean that their learning has to be done by AI. Learning with AI and learning only thanks to AI are two very different things. So for me, I welcome in education the introduction of AI for certain things, like relieving teachers of administrative and grading sort of the bulk of it, for personalizing learning, because at the moment the curricula is a conveyor belt. You have a group of students moving together through something. If I don't understand something or I need more time, exam time comes and everybody needs to move at the same time. AI can help me to personalize the learning experience, because we are all different, we all learn differently. But I still need teachers and professors and faculty and mentors and coaches to accompany me through the journey, also because those relationships typically form the bedrock of our life. I mean, some of the teachers I had when I was 6 years old are people who changed my life forever, for the best, with or without AI. So I am in favor of using intelligently AI in education. I am not in favor of people depending on it for not doing the homework. Homework is something we will no longer need in the future, because it's peer-to-peer learning what makes young people and us also adults learn. So even that system we need to revisit.
Well, you said that there is a positive effect of AI use. And in education, for example, it allows us to faster switch to individual, custom-made programs and focus on weaknesses. And this is a great help for the teacher too. So you can do more targeted programs. It's going to be a more personalized approach, and you can size the potential. So would you agree with this kind of definition? And if you agree, then what needs to be done to transform education system in this way, to turn into something new, faster?
I do agree, and I think what needs to be done is, for instance, something very simple. If we introduce AI and prompting as a skill set, right, in a curriculum or in a classroom, in a school, it shouldn't be standalone. It should be in the history course, in the geography course, in the mathematics course, in the foreign language course, because we are training the competence of being able to question, prompt, and make my own decisions with what AI helps me to generate. So it should not be the new curricula that comes on top of everything else as a standalone. Just like in companies, in business, AI, it's not an IT transformation program. It's a cultural transformation. And companies that are successful in using AI treat it as a cultural transformation that cuts across everything. If a company runs AI implementation, through an IT group and it remains at that, I doubt that they will be very successful with what they do. So in terms of the school system, I do believe that what can be done is, for instance, and many countries, especially in BRICS Plus, are beginning to do this, introducing AI ethics and AI prompting as a subject that becomes a skill in each class, regardless of the subject, so that young people and kids begin to play with it, question it, see when there are problems and hallucination, and become critical about what they see, because it is a tool at the end of the day, in a toolkit of a human being that is growing, over time. And that can be done very practically, because there's no need to transform the whole education system at once. Many countries don't even have the budget to be able to do that. But it allows us to start implementing several projects, can be in a school, in a city, in a village, in a region, and start moving with it. Because then over time we will be also able to change the bigger picture, the curriculum, the system that at times has been with us for many years and clearly isn't as agile as we would like it to be.
Well, in response to one of my questions just now, you've touched upon something very important. You mentioned peak of education for the humankind, peak of intelligence. And you said that in the course of education, a human being should be above AI, not below. AI, not under it. So my question is, will everything be able to be above AI? Is there a border? And will the society be separate even more?
It's a very important question, and there is a risk, because this peak, intelligence peak that I was talking about before from this study really scared me, because it indicates that as a society we are becoming dependent. We are becoming dependent on AI. So I think, for instance, take a very brief example. Reading is a skill, is a competence. Most young people don't read anymore. Why? Because it's much easier to consume information in different ways. And I am not advocating that everybody should pick up a book and read, because some people prefer to listen to a podcast or watch a vlogcast, and that is learning as well. But there are certain basic human competencies of the mind, like critical thinking, like reading, etc., that enable us to stay on top of AI. Why? Because we form a general culture. We form our toolkit of human beings regardless of the career choices we make in the future, or etc. My life, I come from the humanities, for instance. I went into economics in terms of my university studies, but before that it was humanities. And at the time, I felt, why am I wasting my time with the humanities? Today, there is a rush back to bring the humanities into people's life, because we learn so many things that we need to use with AI from humanities, which are, the discussion and the knowledge about where humans are coming from, how knowledge is created, how do I question truth, what is truth, etc. So I am concerned about the excessive use and dependency on AI, and we need to be vigilant about that, which also include for an employer or for a school, making sure that people don't become lazy with it, because it's very easy to, I see it myself with my agentic AI tool, I can become very lazy and not do my own work on myself. But if we want a society to stay on top of AI, these are the elements that we need to touch on. But it is a danger. It's important we recognize it, because if we recognize it, we are vigilant. Whether we solve the problem, that's a different story, because it depends also on the development side of AI, which is catching up all the time.
So, as I mentioned, the pace of the progress and AI implementation is staggering. Nothing was before in the humankind history. The first language models appeared a couple of years ago, and now these are powerful tools that if you don't use them, you start to seriously lag behind in the competition. And it's clear that people start worrying about it. It's clear that youth and elder populations start to be nervous. What will happen? How the situation can be improved? So what is at work to be done in this sense by the state? What kind of changes should be in the policy? What kind of solutions? For example, you mentioned School 21 as one of the examples that give additional opportunities. Anything else probably you would recommend?
I would definitely recommend the policy changes that enable and inspire younger and young at heart generations to get their hands dirty with large language models, because we have a collective fear of this technology that is changing very quickly. The only way to get the fear out of the equation is for us to start working with it. And I am someone who has worked in the technology industry for a long time, and the first time I used agentic AI, I was myself apprehensive, because it was a learning curve for me as a learner. So I think policy changes that bring flexibility and opportunities across generations to really understand what these new large language models are, what the applications are, how can I use them in, for my private life as well as my professional life. So that is one. The second one that I would recommend in terms of a policy change, and can start as a pilot or can become policy immediately, is to introduce competency-based education and competency-based assessment. Meaning, as a student, regardless of my age, I progress through something because I have developed a competence, not because there is a calendar that tells me today is assessment day or today is exam day. Because the only way to get this flow of graduates and professionals to go into the middle of the diamond is that by the time they are entering the diamond and they flourish in the diamond, competence development is there. It's like going to the gym or brushing our teeth. Is a daily activity. So competence-based education and assessment is very important. And it simply takes some guidance for schools to ditch exams or multiple choice tests. As a dean, when I became the dean of that university, I made a decision against the curricula, and I explained to the Minister of Education why I was making it. I said, life isn't a multiple choice and isn't an exam. Students need to get their hands and their heads dirty with real problems, in our case, business problems, and be able to make decisions with us when they have learned the competence. That is much more important than an exam or an assessment. And then I would also, that's my third recommendation, policy-wise, I would introduce future readiness as a philosophy, as an approach to look at our own human development and the development of those in terms of teams or classrooms, etc. Because I do believe that future readiness is the key for us to elevate the human side of this equation of humans working with machines.
And this, your core term, future readiness. What can pump it up in a stronger way? For sure not skills, innovation of a new process or getting in crisis situation and finding the way out. When you have to in a limited time, you have to rethink something and find a way out.
Future readiness is a learned behavior, like innovation, like leadership, etc. And it is about making people thrive in the new world of work. So it takes different forms. It takes the form of human development. It takes the form of people who are resilient and can work and live in a resilient way in a time of crisis or hardship. It takes the form of generations of people and talent that are propelling themselves and the business forward, and this is the part of imagination. So it's a very holistic way to look at a human and the value of a human beyond competencies, because we look at motivation, we look at influence, we look at a different way of looking at potential. We look at inquisitiveness, for instance. Can someone ask the right question at the right time? Because with information available everywhere, it isn't about having the answers anymore. It's about knowing when to ask which questions. And this is something that today is not necessarily part of the talent management toolkit that we use. And that's why it is a toolkit that is no longer suited for the human development we need for a new wave of growth.
And probably the final topic that I like to touch upon, how universities and higher education should change with all that. Do we agree with the message that universities should stop selling promises of employment, and the new product of them should be the ability to change the trajectory of their graduates?
So the promise of employment is a difficult one, because at the end of the day, so many universities for so many years have tried to come closer to industry. Some successfully done so. I mean, School 21 is very successful in doing this because there is a system around it. So I think universities should not sell a promise, but should equip students with the set of future readiness enablers that will help them immediately enter the job market, and enter the job market from the doors they want to, right? So that is important. I also think that it is important to remember the promise of employment. Employment is changing anyway, and many of the graduates of today don't want full-time employment. They want to have their gigs, their startups, they want to be investors, they want to be content creators. So maybe we need to help them develop portfolios, because that is very much where we are going.
And my final question today, we discussed a very important topic, but if you could give one thought that would be willing to be heard by politicians, company managers, and simple people, one message, what message would you communicate?
My message would be, if you explore, develop, and deploy what makes you, your team, your people thrive in the new world of work by using the framework of future readiness, your capacity to propel yourself, your company, your country forward will increase exponentially. That's my message.
Thank you very much. That's clear. I was really glad to have this conversation with you today. And I think the topic of education and the way we use the opportunities that new technologies give us in terms of the development of our kids, development of our careers, is really one of the key topics. And for those states who will be able to fine-tune this new infrastructure will take the lead in the modern world. Thank you very much for a very interesting interview.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.